Hello guys, listen, I found this piece of video in my archives. It's to a course I did a couple of years ago for a client. It's kind of long, okay, several minutes long. However, it does go into some detail about the integrated nature of security. So if that's something that interests you as a security professional or an aspiring security professional, you might want to give it a tumble. And with that said, before you bail out, just make sure you give a subscribe, a like, a thumbs up, and all that other stuff. And while I won't be so long the next time, I'll make these things more frequent. But until next time, I'll see you around campus. Bye-bye.
Okay, so now let's take a look at integrated protection. I'm Cole, and thanks for joining me. Protective systems integrate physical protective measures and security procedures to protect assets. The characteristics of integrated systems include deterrence, detection, defense, and defeat. Now at this point, let me just say that the integration of security systems is going to be an on-running theme throughout this series of courses. That said, this particular lecture is going to focus on these 4 Ds: deterrence, detection, defense, and defeat. Deterrence. A potential aggressor who perceives a risk of being caught may be deterred from attacking an asset. But let's talk about defining attack. An attack, for our purposes, is broadly defined. It can be a violent, heavily armed adversary or a terrorist incursion. It can include armed criminal activity, for example, an armed robbery or a street mugging. It includes unarmed activities such as purse snatching, shoplifting, public nuisance such as graffiti, vandalism. An attack can also include things like sabotage by a disgruntled employee, the theft of proprietary information, the theft of office supplies from a branch office. So as you can see, we are defining attack very, very broadly. The effectiveness of deterrence varies with the aggressor's sophistication, the asset's attractiveness, and the aggressor's objective. So some aggressors are more sophisticated than others. For example, our adversaries in the terrorist realm overseas are very sophisticated when it comes to the manufacture of IEDs, suicide vests, the psycho-manipulation of adherents to get them to strap on that vest and commit their lives, the use of social media. They are very sophisticated in these respects. The asset's attractiveness. For example, a jewelry store is obviously going to be attractive to certain parties, as would a gun store, a pharmacy that stores controlled narcotics. All these have certain levels of attractiveness for certain levels of aggressors. On the other hand, your run-of-the-mill hardware store may be less attractive. And of course, the aggressor's objective has to be considered. Is it financial? Is it political? Is it driven by something just as base as revenge? So as you can see here, there's a lot of dynamics at work. Detection. A detection measure senses an act of aggression. It assesses the validity of the detection, and it communicates the appropriate information to a response force, i.e., you and your security people. Now, it's important to note a detection system must provide all 3 of these capabilities to be effective. And once again, those 3 are detecting the aggression, assessing the aggression, and communicating the appropriate information to a response force. 3 components of a successful or effective detection system. Detection measures may detect an aggressor's movement via an IDS or an intrusion detection system, commonly known as a burglar alarm, or they may detect weapons and tools via X-ray machines or metal and explosive detectors. So we're talking about the equipment, the apparatus, the staff that you find at airport terminals, at high-value government facilities, some courthouses, places like high-profile defense contractors. These machines and their attendants can detect tools and explosives via X-rays and metal detectors, and that's another avenue for detection. And also, detection measures may also include access control elements that assess the validity of identification credentials. These control elements may provide a programmed response, admission or denial, or they may relay information to a response force. Guards, security officers, the response force serve as a detection element. They detect intrusions, and they can also control access. Now, when we say admission or denial, what we're talking about is when you approach a security officer at an entry control point, or you approach a card reader or a biometric scanner, whatever the case may be, it will either admit you into the area or deny you entry. And in many cases, the denial will be transmitted to a response force for further investigation. An important point. You're not going to be surprised by this, but probably one of the most effective and expensive detection elements is the human factor. That is, human beings. Your security officers are multifunctional. They detect possible intrusions, they control access, and they can respond and will respond to intrusions. Now let's talk about defense. Defensive measures protect an asset from aggression by delaying or preventing an aggressor's movement toward the asset, or by shielding the asset from weapons and explosives. And of course, in this day and age, we need to be concerned with some of these high-profile threats, weapons as in active shooter, explosives as in terrorism. They are all realities we have to deal with. So defensive measures include delaying aggressors from gaining access. And you need to protect your assets because your aggressors may be using tools in a forced entry, what we call a brute force attack. These measures include barriers along with a response force, fences, doors, locks, these types of things. You want to prevent the aggressor's movement toward an asset. Additional measures, in addition to barriers, include obscuring lines of sight, or LOSs, to assets. What we mean here is, not only do you want to protect and delay an aggressor from reaching the asset, but a great strategy is to deny him line of sight. If he can't determine where the asset is, or his or her proximity to that asset, you have just given yourself a great tactical advantage. And again, assets have to be protected from the effects of tools. What we mean by that is like crowbars, sledgehammers, screwdrivers, cutting torches, explosives, whatever the case may be. You need to protect that asset or your assets from these tools, from these devices. Now, defensive measures can be active or passive. Active defensive measures are manually or automatically activated in response to acts of aggression. For example, if there's an intentional breach of the perimeter, lights will turn on, security forces will be alerted and respond. These are active defensive measures. On the other hand, passive defensive measures do not depend on detection or a response. They include such measures as blast-resistant building components, such as ballistic glass in your architectural design, fences, locks, lighting, routine security patrols, closed circuit television, and so on. Security staff may also be considered as a defensive measure. I think that's kind of a no-brainer right there. Let's talk about defeat. Most protective systems depend on response personnel to defeat an aggressor. Defensive and detection systems must be designed to accommodate, or at least not interfere with, the response force activities. Now, what do we mean here? Quite simply, it means that your security apparatus, your security system, cannot interfere with the responding security force. For example, if your response force is responding to a potential breach and they're en route and they have to negotiate various card readers, various combination keypads, various turnstiles and clearance points, doors and whatnot, it's going to be counterproductive. They have to get from spot A to Z in the most efficient, timely manner. But another example would be like the inappropriate use of lighting. Security lighting along the perimeter or at an entry control point has more than once debilitated the responding security people. They inadvertently blind the responding security force or make it difficult to read documents at an entry control point, or they cast shadows, which are not tactically advised, of the security force. So poorly deployed lighting can also interfere with your responding forces. And these are just a couple of examples. So there you have it. Let's put a bow on this and call it a day.
Okay, there you have it, folks. The takeaway here is the 4 elements, the 4 Ds: deterrence, detection, defense, and defeat. But if there's one major takeaway I want you to have, is that obviously there's a method to our madness. Security is much more than just a guard at the door. You need to understand that, and you can learn more by subscribing to this channel and updating your skills and taking your career beyond the guard card. I'm Cole Morris. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and everything else. Be in touch, and catch you on the flip side. Bye-bye.